to make sure like beforehand, and I was like, how in the heck does he have? His grandma and his aunt ended up having it.
Okay.
So family festivities tied into that. And,
Sure.
yeah.
He's better now.
Yeah, he's good, man. He's good. He's good. Back to full health, playing around.
Yeah.
Doing his thing. This is crazy. I don't know. I didn't think it was gonna feel like this. I feel like I'm back in 10th grade.
Sophomore year.
I feel like I'm in 10th grade. I feel like I was thinking about that. All right, appreciate it, GG. All right, so I feel like I'm in 10th grade when when we were in your class, and for some reason we were in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we were in the newspaper for, but I just remember like that was a big thing for some reason. I remember that day. I remember doing projects in class, listening to music with Tia and Sabrina. Man, I don't know what kind of kid I was back then. Hopefully I wasn't too bad.
You were a great kid. My funniest memory, as I was driving down, I was doing the same thing you were, kind of thinking back 10 years ago, which is crazy.
Yes.
But there was my first semester at Carver when I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing, and I was like, all right, everybody's going to write whatever it was, 10-page paper. No practice, no warning, just 10-page paper. And you turned in it was in world history, and you turned in a paper with the note, I worked really hard on this, Mr. West, with my sister, Daniel, and I started reading it, and I was like, this feels like a Wikipedia page. And I typed in a sentence, and it was Genghis Khan's entire Wikipedia page.
It was. I totally. Because I think I put that note, because when I was reading it, I copy and pasted it. I started reading. I was like, "This doesn't sound anything like me. This sounds nothing like me." So maybe if I like try to blame it on somebody else, it'll sound a little bit better.
Yep. Nah, but I learned the value. Kids teach teachers just as much as teachers teach students. The lesson I took away from that was like, you can't just tell someone to go write a 10-page paper. Like, you gotta divide that shit out and
it builds up. And college, it was a lot of that. It was do the 3-pager, then the 5-pager, and the 7-pager. But you having us do that 10-page paper it may have seemed like a lot, but it was a great start. Yeah. And we had never done anything like that before. Like not in. Trying to think, what was that? 10th grade, so 9th grade. Who did I have for English? I don't even remember, man.
Houston, maybe? No. Who would you have had as Trujan?
Miss Trujan. Yeah. Miss Trujan. Yeah. So maybe I did write a 10-page paper then, because Miss Trujan was my favorite teacher. She challenged me to write. She wrote me a card about as big as this paper, and it described who I was. Yeah. And she was like so able to write, but can't pay attention, and it just it hurt my feelings to this day. But I got it. No, I'm joking. I got it in my shrine, so to speak, in my parents' home. I treasure things like that. Yeah. So
I love that. I'm gonna take a picture and send it to Miss Trudy when we're done.
Yeah, please. Miss Trudy is freaking awesome. I know a couple of.
She is awesome.
It had to be a year ago.
There we go. That's awesome.
It had to be a year ago. She was dealing with some health issues, I think, like some colon issues or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I follow her. I hope she's okay. Yeah. She was such a great teacher, though. She loved us. All right, let's make this official.
I'm going to put my thing on Do Not Disturb. All right.
No, you're fine. You want more headphones or no?
Sure. Yeah. Got to do the real thing.
All right, cool. Take a deep breath. I'm so nervous. I've done this before, but I'm just so nervous. I don't know why. All right, so welcome to another episode of the Food for the Homeless podcast, episode 2. I'm super, super excited to have the guest we have today, and I'll just give him a brief but powerful introduction. So this next guest is one of the humblest individuals I've come across, an Atlanta native, Grady High School alumni, and Princeton graduate. This guest has made it his life mission to help the less fortunate and never forget where he comes from. Shortly after Princeton, this guest returned to the inner cities to teach students at Carver High School who are still unable to forget his compassion for them, his willingness to help everyone succeed, and most importantly, his energy at the pep rallies. Moving forward, this guest also served as the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education's District 3 representative, serving as chair of its Budget Commission and legislative liaison to the Georgia General Assembly. As chair of the Budget Commission, Matt led efforts to cut waste from the central office, increase teacher pay, allocate funding based on student needs, and direct more dollars to classrooms. During his tenure Atlanta Public Schools' graduation rate increased 19 points from 58% to 77%, and the district saw improved SAT, ACT, and advanced placement test scores system-wide. This guest now serves, with his most recent term just starting not too long ago, this guest now serves as the Post 2 at-large member of the Atlanta City Council. There's no one else I would rather have protecting the legalities of our city. Please help me welcome the amazing Matt Westmoreland.
Appreciate that very much, man. It is great to be here.
We were just talking about me copy and pasting. that was a bit of it. I think the reason when I see you, Mr. West, one of the reasons I'm not nervous, but I think people grow, right? Mm-hmm. People grow over time, and the things you not only did for my class, the class of 2013, but the classes after that, the things you've done in the city, the things you're doing for the community is just amazing. And I admire you, and I appreciate you for being here.
Nah, wouldn't have missed it for the world. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Mr. West. All right, so I have to ask you this. My first question is, Carver High School, coming from, I know you went to Grady, right? Grady alumni.
That's right.
Not too far away, but you stepped away to go to Princeton, a very prestigious school. What made you want to come back and teach the inner city? And was it something like, I know I had teachers that were in, even I applied for Teach for America or some other support group. So what made you come back to teach at Carver?
Yeah, so my interest in education started back when I was a junior or senior in high school. I was at Grady, and I have a memory of being a senior walking into my AP Lit class. Was taught by a guy named Mr. McCurdy, and he also happened to be one of my mock trial coaches, and he shared a wall in Grady with a woman named Maren Sorensen, who was a new teacher through Teach for America, and I have this memory, I don't know, October, November of my senior year back in 2005, of talking to the two of them as they both sat or stood outside their doors, and I looked over McCurdy's shoulder into the classroom that I was getting ready to go into, and there were like 14, 15 kids, and all of them were white. And then I looked over Miss Sorensen's shoulder into the classroom that she was getting ready to go teach, and it was a non-honors 9th grade lit class, and there were twice as many kids, and each of them was black. And as I thought about that image in my mind, I was like, damn, even inside my high school, Grady, there's this literal wall that is dividing kids who come from one part of town or certain neighborhoods in the Grady zone with kids who live somewhere else. And this classroom has twice as many kids in it as the one that I'm getting ready to walk into. And that is, I was receiving an education at Grady that allowed me to go to Princeton. And what hit me was that was not the education that everybody was getting in Atlanta Public Schools and even in Grady. And so I went away to college, and kind of that piece kind of sat in the back of my mind, and I was like, I had the opportunity to go to the Ivy League, and that was going to open doors for me to go wherever it was that I wanted to go. And the answer to that was back to Atlanta to teach, to try and help open doors for kids and students who were in my classroom. So that moment is probably what kind of triggered me wanting to go into education.
Gotcha. I guess just listening to that, a lot of times we read about things and we see it in the paper or we see it in books. But was that, I know I've had a couple of times when I noticed the gap, right? I noticed either the wealth gap, racial gap, however you want to put it. Was that your first time experiencing that and seeing it firsthand?
So that's a great question. That time in high school was probably one of the earlier times. Yeah, as I think about my childhood, I grew up in Morningside. It's right near Piedmont Park. I went to church in Buckhead, and so my entire life was kind of within a maybe 2 or 3 mile radius of where I grew up. All my schools were nearby. Where I went every Sunday morning was nearby. And so I have a memory, my first year at Carver, I drew the short end of the straw, and so I got charged with taking a dozen kids on an outward bound trip to North Carolina. And you may remember D'Angelo, who was a student a year ahead of you, and he and I were sitting on the bus next to each other to start our trip up to North Carolina, and we were driving down Piedmont Road, getting ready to get on I-85, like literally less than a mile from where I'd grown up. Mm-hmm. And Kilo looked out the window and he was like, "Damn, Mr. West, I'm not sure I've ever been to this part of Atlanta before." And that statement shocked me because that was like where I had grown up. But as we talked more about where he grew up, I had never been to his neighborhood as a junior in high school. And it just kind of reinforced for me that there's some pretty significant divides and walls and barriers that exist between white folks and black folks, between folks of different income levels across Atlanta. And that is kind of what has driven me to, whether it's run for the school board or run for city council now, like thinking that there are levers that people in government can pull to try and close those gaps and tear down those barriers.
Okay. So I have a question that leads into that. I think I myself, with them now developing not Piedmont, but Grant Park, I've been living off of Moreland Avenue for 25 years.
Yeah.
So making that left, coming down, I believe it's, I don't want to say Ormwood Avenue, but something like that, leading over to Grant Park. Grant Park now is a nice place. The Atlanta Zoo is renovated, but thinking back, I had never been to Grant Park or experienced that. And you're right, that story with Keangelo is very familiar to me as well, because a lot of times a block over, the disparity is so clear. Just one block or two blocks over, and I'm always wondering what that is. So what were, I'm gonna take it back a little bit. So leaving Princeton, leaving Princeton. Obviously, Grady is in Atlanta, but you said you took this AP course, correct? And it was kind of a separation. Leaving there, going to Princeton, still having that mindset, not that you wanted to be separated, but just of separation in general, and knowing that. What were your thoughts walking into Carver?
Yeah.
Well, what were your initial thoughts?
So I think having come up through APS, I went to Inman and then I went to Grady, and I had done student government at Grady. I was president my senior year, and so I spent a lot of time interacting with students who went to Mays and Doug and Farrell and South Atlanta, Carver, and so I feel, as this like 23-year-old, skinny white teacher walking into Carver for the first time, even though, that was a new environment for me. And Princeton was way different than Grady. And then obviously Carver was pretty different than Princeton. But I feel like my time in APS as a student and then getting to know other students made that transition actually pretty chill, at least from my mind. Like, I dove right in, loved the kids that I started making relationships with, had great colleagues, all of their names, but just up and down, both always teachers who I learned a whole lot from. Had a crazy principal, but crazy in a good way, right? Like Ms. Thornton had super high expectations for students and for teachers.
Yes.
And like, you met those expectations because that was your job. And it was such a awesome environment. And to your introduction earlier, like, we matched working really hard with also having a lot of fun, whether it was at pep rallies or somewhere else. And so, I don't know, Carver was just a really special, magical place, and I was super fortunate to have been there for 4 years.
Yeah, I don't remember any type of discomfort. I don't remember it being a big scene about you starting as a teacher. Even with, we were talking about one of my older teachers, Miss Trujan. Miss Trujan was white as well, but it was always welcoming, and I don't think it was anything about the color of skin. I think it was the love that you guys had for us, and we could genuinely feel it every single day. Like, coming into your classroom with the projects we had, with the enthusiasm you gave us, we always felt that, and we knew that, one, none of us had met everybody that ever went to Princeton. I don't think so. Maybe out of my high school class, what is that, 100, 200 people? I guarantee you, maybe 5 of them knew somebody that went to an elite level school like that. So, in that saying, that kind of took away from what you look like, and it made it seem like, okay, he's the model for what we can be, if that makes sense. You know, at least for me, that's what I kind of took from it. So, you do these amazing things. We focus big on the SAT and the ACT. It actually becomes important, you know, kind of. We start to measure it on a bigger scale, and some students actually start to care about it. Like we doing somewhat SAT prep work. Some schools probably pay for students to do it, but some of us do it on our own time during this time. What were your feelings when you see when they announce, you know, we've gone up such and such percent on the ACT and the SAT? What was your feeling?
Yeah. So, you know, I got a couple thoughts about standardized tests. As a teacher, you know, so much of how schools are viewed is based on like end of course test scores or SAT or ACT scores. And so like it's interesting as a teacher, you actually feel pressure that I think students feel too, to like make sure that the scores are really, really high so that you're doing right by kind of your school and its reputation, and making sure that people know that Carver is providing a great education for students. It cuts both ways because I often felt like we spent too much time on kind of drilling into kids' minds, like, you know, there's a 60 question multiple choice test at the end of a semester, and like that, so much of the semester was just driven towards making sure kids, you know, exceeded on those 2 or 3, 4 tests that semester. So on SAT and ACT, you know, it's kind of like graduation rates. It's, you want, you know, when I was a teacher and then when I became a school board member, like, you know, high schools are judged based on their graduation rates. How many kids who start their freshman year graduate 4 years later. At Carver, that number was always between like 97 and 100%. It was incredibly high because Ms. Thornton had really high expectations. You know, at other schools around APS, the number was a lot lower. Same was true for SAT and ACT. And so it's a struggle because you want those percentages to be as high as possible. But several times, you know, I felt like we pushed standardized test scores kind of at the expense of other things. Maybe, you know, tapping into people's creativity and or helping focus on writing, which once you get out of high school is such an important skill to have, but one that maybe isn't focused on as much as it should have been, which was something I tried to get better at as a teacher. And so, you know, you want scores to go up because that's how society defines the quality of a school. But at the same time, like, standardized test scores aren't everything. Right. And even though sometimes we make them the end all be all, which I think is a mistake.
I was having this conversation with my wife the other day, and just about her old high school and what life was like for her in high school. She's from the Conyers area. I'm from Carver, so I'm from downtown Atlanta. Yeah. So it's a bit different. So we were talking, and she said something like we had home ec. We had home, like something you would see in something I saw in High School Musical.
Yeah, that's right.
I had never seen it in real life, so I was just talking to her about that. How could a school, or how could that be implemented in a school system? Something like not even just home ec, but even life skills, financial literacy, something like that. How could that be implemented?
Nah, it's a really good point. So when I was in high school, actually, kind of the 2002 to 2006, the swing was starting in Atlanta, but also across the country. This concept that, you know, we need to be getting more kids ready for and into college, and that is true. And what I think the pendulum swung too far in the direction of setting an expectation that every single kid is supposed to go to a 4-year college. And I have a brother who never went to a 2 or a 4-year college. And so I think the lesson that we started to learn when I was a teacher, and then when I joined the school board, we tried to kind of swing the pendulum back a little bit, is that the goal of a school system, like, we rewrote the mission and vision for APS when I joined the board, and it was all about making sure every kid graduates ready for college and career. And so it's like, for kids who want to go to college, our job is to make sure you're ready once you get on the college campus. For kids who choose not to go to college, our job is to make sure that you're ready to move into a job that pays a living wage so you can support yourself and your family and still live in Atlanta or wherever you choose to live. And sometimes that means going back, and we've opened up at the old Parks middle school campus. There's now a college and career academy that is focused on less, not necessarily home ec so much, but like the skills that allow you to get jobs that pay, you know, 70, 80, 90, $100,000 that actually don't even require a college degree, or you go to ATC for a couple semesters or a couple years to get skilled up so that you can then go and take a job that allows you to make the amount of money that you want to make. And it was this, you know, way back in the day, there was a lot of, you know, shop class or home ec, or there was like a college route and then a trade route, and we swung all the way to everybody needs to be ready to go to college. And now I think we're continuing to try and find this balance, which is wherever a student chooses to go, let's make sure that they're ready for whichever pathway they choose. And that means not just being focused on college all the time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think this, first of all, this college career center you mentioned, the knowledge and the information there, is it free?
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally free, and
For
this is at the
students.
Parks Middle School campus.
Yeah.
So somebody 18 getting out of school can go there and learn how a certain trade.
So it's actually for kids it's for APS students when they're still in high school.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's meant to try and provide those skills so that once they get their high school diploma, that they're like ready to go do whatever it is that they want to do next, and not have to wait until they get out of high school completely.
Gotcha. Okay. And another question I have off of that is, it's kind of it's not off the wall, but it may not be one you know the answer to. What do you think the best route is for someone that wants to take the strictly route of like being a plumber?
Yeah.
Or being because when I was coming out of school, my mom strongly talked about Atlanta area tech.
Mm-hmm.
Off of I think I drove all the way to the Clarkston campus.
Yeah.
Trying to learn how to be a truck driver.
Yeah.
You know, get my CDL.
Yeah. Yep.
But you know that costs money. So
yes, it does.
Is there financial assistance for these type of things? And what do you think the best route is for somebody trying to go into a strict trade?
Yep. So that's actually the idea behind the College and Career Center, is connecting, being a place where we can connect students who want to focus on that as their future while they're still in high school. You know, a couple thoughts. One, this program started 7 or 8 years ago now. It's called Achieve Atlanta, and there's significant funding set aside for APS graduates who want to go to either a 2 or a 4-year college inside Georgia, public school, to try and help cover the costs for that, so that kids don't have to go into debt. That option exists for technical colleges too. So like if a student wants to go to Atlanta area or Atlanta Technical or any of the other, I think there are 22 technical colleges around Georgia, like there are financial resources available to any APS graduate. They literally just go Google Achieve Atlanta, and you'll be able to find some more information about that.
Achieve Atlanta, guys. Go and look into that right away. Funding available. I think that's one of the biggest things that separates people from trying to go to the next level, is I can't afford it.
Yep.
Or money isn't available. But between the amount of grants that I've seen awarded, like you said, programs like Achieve Atlanta, it's definitely possible. Wanted to go back to, so we talked about earlier, you being at Grady and seeing the separation from the AP classes, also doing the outward bound trips at Carver, seeing the student life at Carver. Did any of your political aspirations come from seeing that student life?
Yeah.
And was politics always a plan to help you, help the community?
Yeah. So I'll admit to being the third grader who dressed up as Bill Clinton and went and shook everybody's hands at the Morningside Elementary School Halloween Carnival back in 1996. So I was a weird kid. I've embraced that. Live who you are. But so I was always interested in politics, probably to a weird degree, growing up in elementary, middle, and high school. It was my time as a senior that I've talked about already at Grady, and then definitely by the time I got to Carver, that redirected my interest. I'd spent a lot of time kind of focused on Washington, D.C. and the president and Congress and all that stuff. And when I became a teacher, I started teaching the week before APS started going through its very public and painful cheating scandal. Right? Yeah. And so to watch, this school system that I had come up through and graduated from, be under state investigation, and then 180 teachers and administrators were implicated, and then there was a lot of fighting that was taking place among members of the school board. There were 9 of them, and they created 2 factions, and kind of 5 of them overthrew the chair and the vice chair, and then the other 4 who lost sued the 5, and it was just really messy. And it was your sophomore year, and it was like at a time when the graduation rate for the system was like 51%, and you may or may not remember, like, the air conditioning in my classroom didn't really work the 3.5 years I was at Carver, and the amount of money teachers got paid stayed the same all of those 3.5 years. And so there were just a lot of challenges going on at the APS level that made me, I was still interested in politics, but my mind kind of shifted away from the president and Congress to, like, there's a school board right here in Atlanta, and there's an election in 2013, and here is a group of 9 elected officials who get to hire a new superintendent, and like they're in charge of how to spend $1 billion and make decisions that impact 51,000 kids. And so that was really captivating to me, to try and think about how to make change on a broader level for students I taught at Carver, and then tens of thousands of other students across the city.
Yeah, just the description is captivating in itself of what you can do in that position. But going back to 3rd grade, when a lot of kids are interested in trains, planes, but they never. I mean, politics is awesome, but you never really get to nurture the ideas that you come up when you're young.
Yeah.
What do you think that influence comes from? Like, what did you see? Where did that come from?
That's a fair question. So my dad, until he retired, was a Superior Court judge in Fulton County, and I think part of it stemmed from that, like kind of watching him as a little kid, watching him come home. He would come into the house at 6:30 or so every night, and he would like sit down and he would read the newspaper and watch the Braves play. And when you're a little kid, you want to be just like your parents. And so I was like, well, I want to read the newspaper, which I think is where I started getting an interest in like current issues and current affairs.
Yes.
And it's also where I fostered my love of initially the Braves, and then later on a whole bunch of other teams, including Georgia. Go Dogs.
Go Braves.
That's right. Dogs are playing in an hour.
Yeah.
And so I think it probably started from my dad, and then as I got older, kind of that interest grew, and I, was able to. Congressman Lewis, frankly, was a hero and mentor to a lot of us.
Yes.
But being able to grow up in Atlanta, where the civil rights icon, as someone that you got to see in middle school. Like, he came and spoke at Inman, and he came and spoke at Carver, and just being that close to such a pivotal person in history, who then went on to be in Congress for a long time, kind of kept fueling that interest in government.
That's amazing. So did you take tidbits from your father and people like John Lewis to understand what role you wanted to play in government, or what route did you take to try to learn how can I make a difference? Like, what route did you take to do that?
That's an interesting question. So I think what part of why I ran for school board in 2013 was that I ran for the board during my 4th year as a teacher, and I think it was actually kind of our experience together as students and teachers at Carver that kind of informed my thinking at the time, because I remember in the summer of 2013 I was wrestling with running for office or not, and I was like, all right, I love Carver, I love my kids, I have great colleagues, I have a good boss, like, I love coming to work every day, feel like I'm making a difference, cool. And then over here it was like, all right, there are 9 people on the school board, every seat is up for election this year, 4 people aren't running for re-election, whoever gets elected to the board is going to hire a new superintendent next spring. And so it was like, there's a chance, even though I was 26 at the time, like, there's a chance for me to go be in the room sitting at the table helping make new policy or helping make funding decisions or helping kind of steer APS in a different direction, so that the kids I taught at Carver and then all the kids who will come after them will hopefully benefit from the decisions that group is going to make. And so there's no way I would have run for school board had I not been a teacher, and all of the different experiences that either I had personally or that I saw my students have, like, were super impactful drivers in every vote I took, everything I wanted to push, every decision I made. All of that stuff tied back to my time in the classroom.
It's almost unbelievable to hear that how everything worked together in your life.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems like it was perfect. It was the way it was supposed to be. And I guess I'm glad the Carver experience and all of the things that led up to that put you right in the position to go into office. I don't think I could think of a better person that could be in government that, that's trustworthy, that's dedicated to us, and that your reasoning isn't because, it's not something that's selfish. It's selfless. Your reason for going into government is to help people and the people you come along the way. So I think that's a beautiful thing, Mr. West, and I'm just happy you're in the position you're in. Congrats on another term.
I appreciate that, bro.
That's amazing. So now comes down to I don't know the details of how you hold the seat.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's 10 seats open, do they require a vote? Were you at all nervous about that?
Yeah, so I have been on a ballot 3 times now. When I ran for school board, I ran to represent a district within Atlanta, so like the eastern kind of 6th of the city. And then these last 2 times on council, I was on everybody's ballot across the city because I ran for one of the citywide roles.
Okay.
So definitely nervous. Like you put yourself out there. There's a winner and there's a loser in an election.
Yeah.
And to run around town and either in 2017 kind of lay out your vision for what you want to try and help Atlanta become, and then in 2021 I was running for re-election, so like I had a record that I had to defend. Like, here are the things we've done over the last 4 years. Here's what I'm proud of. Here's where we didn't make as much progress as I wanted to. Here's what I want to focus on the next 4 years. And then you wake up on election day and 100,000 people go to vote, and you hope that you get at least 50% of their votes, and that has been the case each of the last 2 times. So yeah, definitely some nervousness.
That has to be nerve-wracking. I can feel it. That has to be nerve. I can literally feel like when you said waking up to that many people and then it's announced on the news.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't the only way to find out is turn on channel 2.
Right.
Okay. So what does you got a lot of planning to do. You got a lot of proposals to put in place. You're meeting with the mayor. You're meeting with these different people. What does a typical day look like for you as a councilman?
That's an interesting question because there is no typical day almost, and so I'll tell you, maybe even just today. I'll just kind of walk through today, right?
Okay.
So, I got to City Hall this morning and had a zoning committee meeting first thing at the beginning of the day, where not to go down the rabbit hole, but every piece of land inside the city is zoned for something, for houses, for restaurants, for a factory, a gas station, whatever it is. And so I'm a new member of that committee, and so every time anybody wants to change what a piece of land can be used for, they got to come in front of the committee and get the designation changed.
Okay.
So I had a meeting this morning about how we use our land in Atlanta for what different purposes, and then I walked across the street with Mayor Dickens and 4 or 5 other folks from council to the swearing in of the new school board. So they also had elections this past November, and so there are 9 folks on the school board. 3 of them I think are new, and it was the first time that the mayor and the council president, and there were 6 of us from council who went across the street to be like, hey, city government and APS are separate, but we're going to work together more over the next 4 years than we have in the past, which I think is really powerful. And
that's
then,
always a good thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's always good.
And then I came back to City Hall, and we had a public safety committee meeting. It was the first one of the year, but it was taking a look at crime stats across Atlanta, and a report by the fire chief kind of updating us on where things are standing with the police department and the fire department. And then I hopped on a Zoom and talked to a professor at Georgia Tech who is doing some work around kind of climate change and as the planet gets hotter, essentially. He's done some work in other cities around the value of planting trees along streets in different cities, and if you can get to a place where like 50% of your streets are covered by trees, that has this tremendous effect in bringing down the temperatures for the city, even as the planet gets hotter because of climate change. And so like you go from, you know, how you use a piece of land to going and saying hey to new school board members who are going to focus on education, to getting an update from the police chief, to talking about trees, to coming on a podcast with one of your former students. It's like, you know, every day's a little bit different. And so one of the things I love about this job is that you can bounce around. You know, tomorrow I could have a meeting about, you know, where are we going to find more money to build affordable housing units, to how are we going to support small businesses, to, you know, making swimming pools, how are we going to renovate all 10 swimming pools across the city in time for this summer. Like there's just so many different pieces of what it's like to be a part of government that it's always exciting and never dull.
That gives me a lot of hope. You never know, you know, it's going to be a lot of people that watch this podcast that have never seen a councilman, you know, just speak, you know, the way you're speaking right now. So for you to say, it gives me hope that we the people is actually we the people, right? So everything you mentioned was just people, whether it's a Georgia Tech professor or a firefighter, they're just generating ideas that can help the community, help the world. Obviously, it has to go up against a vote and a bill and all these official things, but it starts with an idea from a person, and that gives me a lot of hope, and I hope the people listening a lot of hope that not whatever they come up with is just going to get approved, but if it has some substance to it, if it's willing to help a lot of people and it's able to help a lot of people, I'm sure you and, you know, other people in that same seat or similar seats will be able to listen to it and break it down to where it could be something that affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
I got a selfish question though.
Go for it.
So, you talked about zoning.
Yeah.
I got two selfish questions. One is a question about opportunity zones. I learned about this a while ago. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. From what I know is opportunity zones are pieces of land that can become tax-free after a certain amount of time. That's the gist I know.
Yeah.
So how would someone, I got, the whole point of this podcast for me is for people to come on here and be able to learn.
Yeah. To
learn from a councilman, to learn from, we talked about trades earlier, to learn from a plumber, a firefighter, these different things. So opportunity zone probably would deal with real estate or someone, you know, just trying to farm land. It could be multiple things. How would someone go into finding opportunity zones and taking advantage of them? How could you even find those?
Ooh, so that is an awesome question, A. Number two, I'm not the expert on that topic, but I will direct you to people who are. So Invest Atlanta is the city's economic development arm, and they're kind of charged with three things. One is economic development, community redevelopment, and then workforce development. And those three things are really important to me in terms of making sure that our residents and our communities are growing and thriving. So actually I was going to do this at the end, but I'll do it now. My email address is mwestmoreland@atlantagA.gov, and my cell phone number is still 404-408-0980. And so whether it's, you know, anybody watching or listening who wants to learn more about opportunity zones, shoot me a text or shoot me an email, and I will connect you to the people in charge of that program at Invest Atlanta. or anything else that I can ever help anyone who's listening with, whether it's in the city of Atlanta or not. Probably chances are I can find someone who knows someone if I don't know them that can help you with anything that might be government or education related. So don't ever hesitate to shoot me a text or send me an email, and we'll help get it worked out, including all the details. Because opportunity zones are fascinating, complex things that the federal government instituted to try and help generate development in parts of communities that haven't seen them. And happy to connect you to someone who can tell you all about them.
No, for sure. Thank you, Mr. West. That's so open and accessible of you to,
Sure.
to open it up. But you've always been that way. I wouldn't expect anything different. Thank you for that. I think the reason why it's important to me and maybe to other people listening is because it's always funny to see memes and things, but people are always talking about don't sell grandma's house, right?
Yeah.
So things are getting gentrified. We talked about Grant Park, areas are changing, and people are, all they owe is the taxes on these homes, property taxes, and they're selling these homes to big businesses, especially close to the airport like we are now.
Yeah.
They're selling their homes for just for the dollar value when, it's so much deeper. It goes down to generational wealth. So I really want people that are listening to understand that things like opportunity zones are out there, and you're able to invest in these areas. Go to Invest Atlanta, contact Mr. West, and find out from Invest Atlanta what areas you're able to invest in, so that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, your children won't have to pay taxes on their land, and they won't have to give it up because they can't either afford the taxes or they can't afford how much it costs from then on. You want them to be able to be covered for the next 15 to 20 years. It's not about what we're doing now, it's about what we'll be able to do in the future. Another question. I was upset. I was super upset. I vote not too far from here at McNair High School, and not only you were running, but I have my coach from middle school, Coach Al. I don't know if you know him. I forgot what his last name is. His first name is Al, though. I think he was running from Post 3.
Okay.
He's running for this. I believe he's running for the same. Do you know Julian Bond?
Yeah.
Julian Bond is
Alfred Chivy Brooks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alfred Brooks. That's my coach from middle school.
No kidding.
Yes, Coach Al.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to shoot him a picture too.
Yeah, Coach Al.
That's awesome.
I messaged him on Facebook to volunteer in his campaign just to help because I was amazed.
Yeah.
That he was running for such a position, but it's crazy how things come full circle.
What sport?
Basketball.
Okay.
Yeah, and just PE in general.
Yeah.
In middle school.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
So yeah, he was running for it, and I went to. I guess the short end of the story is I went to McNair, and I couldn't find you guys on the ballot.
Yeah.
And I was pissed. I was very upset. So I went. I'm trying to think if I can say this. When I was leaving, they give you the ID card. You put it in the machine to cast your ballot.
Yep.
And I asked the lady before I was leaving, it was kind of a detailed question. I was like, can I get a map of, first of all, I said, I'm looking for these two people to vote for.
Yeah.
She said they're not on
your ballot.
Yeah, or they're not in the city of Atlanta or something.
Yeah.
I was like, well, where is the map to show me where I can go vote for them?
Right.
And I couldn't find it online. So what's the best way to be able to do that?
Yeah. So that's McNair is less than a mile. It's funny. I think you actually sent me a message on election day. Yeah. You were not the only person to send me a message that day because, Atlanta is confusing in that we've got like the city limits, Carver to Moreland Avenue essentially is kind of the dividing line between the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County. It gets a little confusing because there are some neighborhoods, Edgewood, Kirkwood, Eastlake, East Atlanta, that are in DeKalb County and in the city, but most of DeKalb County is not inside the city limits. And so like when you went to McNair to vote, you would have had DeKalb County elected officials on your ballot to vote for, but not city of Atlanta folks. And so it gets to like normal people who just are living their lives every day and don't eat, sleep, and breathe politics. Sometimes if you live, not that far from the city limit, you might think you live in Atlanta because, a lot of people in metro, people will say they are from Atlanta, even though they might be from Jonesboro or Douglasville or Marietta, right? Whenever you were out of town, you like people are like, where are you from? You say Atlanta, and so it gets confusing sometimes because the only people who like live inside the city limits proper can vote in city elections or for city candidates, which sucks. I know if you're trying to go vote for specific folks.
I'm trying to think about the difference between the two. So DeKalb, if I'm voting for the DeKalb elections, I'm voting for people that control laws and policies inside of DeKalb County.
That's right.
And then what does City of Atlanta cover though? Is that just downtown or what does that cover?
Yeah, so City of Atlanta, it's 132 square miles, and so it runs from like Chastain Park, Chastain Park to Lenox Square, and then like Emory University is in Atlanta, and then you go like all the way down to Thomasville Heights, to South Atlanta High School, and then it goes all the way over to like the Camp Creek area, the Target and the TGI Fridays and all that kind of stuff, and then it loops back around on the west side, over Bankhead. All of Bankhead to 285 is inside the city. It gets complicated sometimes to try and like figure out what's in the city and what's not. But it's kind of like downtown is the core, and then it kind of grows out, maybe 7 or 8, 9 miles in any direction from downtown. And then once you get if you keep going down Camp Creek past the Fridays, pretty soon you're going to get into the city of South Fulton. And if, on the other side, if you cross Moreland, you get out of Atlanta and you get into unincorporated DeKalb. And so you're like voting for county commissioners or school board members who run either DeKalb County schools or DeKalb County government. And so it gets a little confusing, but it always depends on kind of what your address is.
I get that. I mean, that's fair. And if you have a certain issue where you stay, you just got to identify who those officials are. So I mean, it's organized in a way. Yeah, like I said, it was selfish. I was upset.
No, it's okay.
No, it's cool.
I was upset too.
No, man. But
I appreciated your vote in 2017, though. I remember it.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're there every time, and you stepping into that office also brought light to politics in our eyes too. So now we're going to the polls. Our first time voting. I see the picture you post with Chastity every single year.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah. We have a lot of good time together. It's fun.
That's awesome, man. So we're talking about City of Atlanta. How do the decisions you make in your position at Post 2, how do they affect the community? Directly? How do they affect us? I'm sure it's depending on project, but in general.
Yeah. So I mean, as you think about city government, or like the how either the mayor, Dre, or members of council, any time you interact with public safety, Atlanta Police Department, Atlanta Fire Department, that comes back to city government. Anytime you go into any park inside the city limits or rec center inside the city limits, that comes back to us. The airport is operated and controlled by the city. The water that you drink or take a shower in is controlled by the Department of Watershed Management. Invest Atlanta that we talked about earlier, trying to help, whether it's recruiting Fortune 500 companies to come build a new headquarters in Midtown, or providing grants to a coffee shop in Cascade Heights that's trying to get off the ground and get started. There's so many different pieces of, Atlanta Housing Authority, people who either live on Atlanta housing property or who get a voucher. MARTA's kind of its own entity a little bit over there. There are representatives from city government on the MARTA board, but they're kind of their own thing. But as you think about, over the last 2021, whether it's street repavings or building new trails, there's something called the Proctor Creek Greenway that starts at the Bankhead MARTA station, and now it runs right by Westside Park, which we just opened up in the last year, and eventually it'll run all the way to the Chattahoochee River. All of these different pieces of kind of your daily life comes back to picking up the trash and your recycling, or not picking up your trash and recycling every day. All that stuff comes back to city government, and is kind of the responsibility of the mayor and city council to make sure that all of those different critical services are being provided for people, like basic stuff, like picking up people's trash. And then, if someone has an idea and they want to start a small business, or they want to build affordable housing units, or whatever it is that someone might have an idea, like there's a place for city government to try and help those ideas and dreams become reality too.
That's cool, man. That's also reassuring, because it's kind of letting you know that I don't know if I say this right, but like tax dollars are going where they're supposed to.
That's the goal.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And it's not saying that you're fully in control of that, but just a lot of times people are like, well, what projects are they doing? What's being done?
What am I getting for my money?
Yeah, right. So
sure.
what things are going on, and to hear about the Proctor Greenway, and I don't know what you had to do with the Beltline, but if you had anything to do with the Beltline, but a project like that,
sure.
To see the inclusiveness of it, to see so many people able to congregate and meet and just be around each other on a beautiful scenery, those type of things are what we need, and we're proud of that as Atlantans, and we're proud of you for doing it. I know we got to get out of here, so I want to ask you one last question. What do you want people to know about your position, or your next project, and how can they feel like they are a part of the decisions being made in our city?
Yeah, I love that question. So first off, this has been a super inspiring conversation for me. I am incredibly proud of you.
Thank you.
And whether it's the fact that you're a published author or a husband and father, there are few things cooler than thinking back 11 years to watching a little kid run around your class as a sophomore, to seeing you grow up into such an awesome young man is super inspiring. Second, my hope from 4 years on the school board to now starting year 5 on city council is that people have a lot of reasons to be discouraged or demoralized or frustrated about government at a lot of different levels, but my hope is always that whether it is Andre, right, who's born and raised in Adamsville, went to Mays, Georgia Tech, now he's the mayor of Atlanta, to someone like myself who also grew up and is a proud product of Atlanta Public Schools and has been doing work in different places over the years, is that we have people, at least at the local level, who are trying really hard every day to make things better for the people who live here. And part of that, I think, is being accessible and responsive and present. That's why I try and go all over the place all the time. It's why I've dropped 404, 408, 0980 everywhere I go. When you're a local elected official, I want people to feel like they can literally shoot you a text and you will respond and help address whatever idea they have, or whatever problem exists that you can try and help fix. And so I hope that as we kind of start this new year and we got a new term and new folks on council and a lot more younger people, Antonio Lewis graduated from South Atlanta High School here at some point in the last 10 or 15 years. I think he's a couple years younger than me. But we got a lot of new blood and energy in City Hall, ready to keep tackling the challenges that we're facing. And so I'm super excited about that, and I hope that people feel like they can reach out to and touch their elected officials, either with an idea or with an issue, and we'll help get it resolved, and keep trying to make Atlanta a great place for the folks who call it home.
Now, for sure. We've only been here 60 minutes, and you've mentioned several programs that I think are super inspirational. People from Achieve Atlanta to Invest Atlanta to just the overall fact that people are submitting ideas and trying to cure the world or trying to better the world, and you're listening. I think all of those things are things to look forward to. I'm super inspired. One, me and my family are going to be praying for you, because as easy as you make it look, I know your situation is super stressful. That's a lot of pressure on you being the councilman, and people are coming to you asking for answers, and you don't always have them. As a father, as a husband, I don't always have them in my own house. So I can only imagine what you have for an entire city. So I just want to wish you well wishes. I want to appreciate you for being my teacher, being a lot of my friends' hero and being a lot of our role models. And for coming on this podcast was probably 10% of the things you've done for me in my lifetime. So I appreciate you for all you've done for us, Mr. West.
Always going to be here, man.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate that, Mr.